Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar about supersize your downsize. It defies a lot of people's logic that supersizing their downsize may actually be more affordable, but we'll explain why that is during today's webinar. Just a little bit of housekeeping. If you do have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. And likewise, if you have any suggestions for other topics that you would like to hear about, pop those in the chat, or you can get in touch with us by email or phone or Twitter or Facebook or however it is that you like to communicate. So let's get started. Obviously, the purpose of today's presentation is just to give you some really great general information. We're not talking about anyone's in particular financial needs or objectives, and neither this webinar nor the Village Guru Essentials reports are designed to provide financial advice. People should definitely seek advice from a retirement living and aged care specialist. So when it comes to downsizing options, look, there's lots of options. There's more options than what I've popped on this slide. But you know, people typically think about downsizing into a unit or an apartment in a strata title type development. For some people, the objective is to live with family in a granny flat type arrangement. But for today, we'll be talking about retirement communities. And by retirement communities, I'm bunching together retirement villages and land lease communities. The most important thing for anyone considering downsizing into a retirement community in terms of the value, so the bang they're going to get for their buck, is actually something that you can't measure. So it's the vibe. It's whether or not they go to that community and they feel like this is a bit of them. You know, these are their people, these are the things that they would like to be doing. No one ever moved into a retirement community where they felt like a square peg in a round hole and said, well, it was great because it was cheap. It doesn't work like that. So while the Village Guru software is there to help take the financial confusion out of the transaction, the most important part of the transaction is in helping customers understand what is day-to-day life like in the community. So when it comes to the contracts in retirement communities, retirement villages have lots of different contracts. Most common are leasehold and license arrangements, but there are still contracts within retirement villages that operate on strata, on company or unit trust title, which is where you need to buy shares in a company or units in a unit trust for the right to occupy your unit and use the common facilities. And there are rental villages around as well. So there's lots of different types of contract. When it comes to land lease communities, the contract is actually kind of two contracts in one. So there's a contract to buy your house and there's a contract to lease the land on which your house sits. And that difference in contract creates differences in how those communities are assessed from a social security point of view. And I think it's worth pointing out that from a Village Guru point of view, the software will assess retirement communities on the basis of leasehold or license or rental arrangement. So we don't deal with strata based retirement villages, and it understands the rules around land lease communities. So when it comes to the social security treatment, in a retirement village, the amount that someone pays for their home is compared to what's known as the extra allowable amount or entry contribution limit. And that amount is the difference between the homeowner and the non-homeowner asset thresholds. At the moment, that amount is $224,500. So if someone pays more than $224,500, they're classified as a homeowner. The amount they've paid for their home is an exempt asset, and they're generally not eligible for rent assistance. Likewise, the reverse is true. So if the person pays $224,500 or less, then they'll typically be classified as a non-homeowner, and they can claim rent assistance based on the ongoing fees associated with living in the village. When it comes to land lease communities, because of that unique contract structure where the customer owns the home and they lease the land on which it sits, that asset test threshold doesn't apply. They simply say they are a homeowner because they own their home, but they can claim rent assistance on what's called the site fees, which is the rent they pay for the land on which their home sits, and to have use of the common facilities and things of that nature. I can see a hand up, so I'll just jump in and see if we... Sorry, Pam, you've got your hand up. Do you want me to, did you want to ask a question here? No, we might leave it to the end if that's okay. I have unmuted. Sorry, I thought I had unmuted you. Okay, we'll keep going. So when it comes to rent assistance, there's a threshold, but the threshold is relatively low. So the amount of rent someone needs to be paying needs to exceed the threshold for them to be eligible for rent assistance. So you can see that for single people, the threshold is $135 a fortnight, and for couples, it's $219 a fortnight. Once their rent, or in this case, we're talking about site fees in a land lease community, or the general service charge or recurrent charge in a retirement village, then they can claim rent assistance at 75 cents per dollar of rent that they're paying above that threshold, but it's not unlimited. So the maximum payment that they can currently get is about $152 a fortnight if they're single, or $143 a fortnight if they're a couple. And to be eligible for rent assistance, they need to first be eligible for an income support payment, i.e. the age pension. And you can see here the amount of rent they would need to be paying in order to get this maximum payment. So sometimes people say, well, aren't pensioners a dying breed? Are we really going to have that many pensioners in the next 10 or 20 years because superannuation will mean that they won't be eligible? There's all sorts of reasons why people think that we're somehow going to run out of pensioners. The reality is that the changes that the government made to the pension asset test back in 2017 were substantial changes, and they're going to affect a lot of people over the coming decades. But essentially, we're not going to see people lose their pension as a proportion of the population, as much as we're going to see the number of full pensioners reduce. So this blue line here is the number of full pensioners, and this yellow line is the number of people getting a part pension. So you can see that the number of full pensioners is reducing and the number of part pensioners is increasing. But this grey line along the bottom that bobbles along at about 20% is the number of people who won't be eligible for a pension at all. So I guess the thing to think about is sometimes, you know, sales teams will say to me, oh, I don't think anyone who lives in my village gets a pension. That would be very unique relative to the general population. So they might not be advertising the fact that they get a pension. They might not be getting a full pension, but certainly the majority of people who are of pension age are receiving some pension. And that trend is likely to continue for the foreseeable future. So what did the government do back in 2017? Well, they essentially said two things. They said, we'll let you have more in assets before we reduce your pension. So you can see this is a single homeowner. A single homeowner prior to the changes could only have $209,000 of assets. Now that same person can have $280,000 worth of assets before their pension reduces. So that was step one, let them have more assets before their pension reduces. Step two was kind of the sneaky bit. So step two was the government doubled the rate at which the pension reduces once they go over that threshold. So it used to be that the pension reduced by $1.50 for every $1,000 of assets per fortnight. Now the taper rate, which is what they call it, is $3 per $1,000 per fortnight. But a much more simple way to think of it is for every $100,000 that the person goes over the threshold, their pension reduces under the asset test by $7,800 a year. So that can be really difficult to replace as income. And you can end up in a situation where you're paying essentially what I call a double DMF. So on one side of the transaction, the amount of your capital is going down through a deferred management fee, and let's say that's 5% a year. And on the other side of the transaction, the money that this person has in their investments, it can't keep up with that negative 7.8%. It can't restore the income that the person has lost. So let's say that that money earns 2.8%. That means that to have the same amount of income, they would need to reduce their capital on that side of the transaction by 5%. So you're reducing on each side the capital value, which makes a lot of people very nervous, and why supersizing your downsize can be a really good idea. The numbers are the same but different for couples, and what I mean by that is couples are allowed to have more in assets and they have a higher cutoff point, but it is still that same equivalent. Every $100,000 they go over the threshold, they'll lose $7,800 a year of pension. The income test is something that people need to be aware of as well. So when Centrelink calculates someone's age pension entitlement, they calculate it under an income test and an asset test. And deeming is a large part of that income test. So deeming applies to investments, and by investments we mean bank accounts, term deposits, shares, superannuation balances. There's a whole bunch of things that get grouped together and then deemed to earn income. So it's not about what the customer earns as income, and you'll find an explanation about all of this in the Village Guru report itself. It sets out what deemed income is. It's just about applying a rate of income so that people are not incentivized to take bank accounts and other investments that yield low returns. So let's look at a couple of numbers, a couple of case studies so we can see how these numbers work in real life. And a big thank you to our customers Ingenia and Aveo for supplying us with these case studies. And just a note for anyone else on the line who wants to submit a case study, please get in touch. We'd love to show people how you're using the software and how it's creating great outcomes for your customers. So this is a customer who's looking at downsizing into Ingenia Plantations. She's downsizing from a home that's worth $600,000. She's got some personal assets, so car, contents, that type of thing, $25,000. She's got about $100,000 of investments, and she currently receives the full pension. And as a homeowner, she doesn't receive rent assistance at the moment. So for those of you who are not familiar with Ingenia are land lease communities. They don't charge an exit fee and they don't have payment options. So one of the ways in which customers that are downsizing into an Ingenia community can supersize their downsize is to compare two different houses. So they might look at a smaller house compared to a bigger house. Or another way in which they can supersize their downsize is to what I call pimp their ride. So They might be very set on a particular house. They like that particular floor plan, that particular configuration, or whatever it might be, but they might decide to go with the, upgraded appliances, upgraded finishes, perhaps pop the al fresco deck on the back with the fan and the heating bars, and, add some nice extras to their home. Either way, they can utilize this supersize your downsize strategy. And I think it's a great story to show people from the point of view that a lot of people come into retirement communities with what I call a pensioner mindset. So they come in and they've already got in their mind that they want to buy whatever is the cheapest one, because in their mind, the cheapest one equals the most affordable one. And so that they're coming in with that expectation. Whereas being able to show them an example like this, you can actually show them, hey, you can have the bigger house, or you can have, the extras that you thought that you couldn't afford, and this is the impact. So just having a look, this particular customer was tossing up between, it was actually a resale home and a brand new home. So you can see how that affects their investments, and that in turn impacts on their pension. So you can see there's roughly a $7,000 a year difference in their pension entitlement. That they're now receiving, Sally's now receiving rent assistance, which she never received before. And that can come as a nice surprise for a lot of downsizers, because a lot of them have never encountered rent assistance. They're not sure about how to qualify for rent assistance. They don't know how much money they can get. So that can come as a nice kind of added benefit. And this is that deemed income that we were talking about before. So on $350,000, Centrelink will say that she earns $6,750 a year. On $240,000, they'll say she earns $4,300 a year. It's not how much she will earn, it's just how much they will consider her to earn. She might earn more than that, she might earn less than that, for the purpose of calculating her pension. And if she was to get one, her home care package income tested care fee, this is the amount of income that they will assess. In terms of how much she will get back when she moves out, there's an assumption of capital growth at 2%. In these communities, the resident receives 100% of any capital gain. There's also built into these figures some assumptions around renovation costs and selling fees. And you can see there the estimated proceeds after 1, 2, 5, 10 and 15 years. There are no guaranteed buybacks in land lease communities, so her repayment will be made when her house is sold. If we look at another example, this time using Aveo, and for those of you who are not familiar with Aveo, so Aveo have retirement villages. I think they have about 91 retirement villages, but that could be 94, I could be wrong. So across their retirement villages, they have 3 different payment options called Later, Now and Bond, and I'll talk to those a little bit. So the flexibility, and I know a number of the attendees here today are working in the sales team at Aveo. The flexibility that you've got is kind of, twofold. It's the ability to show, a cheaper home with a more expensive home. But then for each of those homes, you've got 3 different payment options. So your customers can supersize their downsize in 2 ways. They could opt for the cheaper home with the different payment option that increases the amount they pay up front and reduces the amount they pay at the end. Or they could supersize their downsize by going for the more expensive apartment or home. Or they could supersize their downsize by going for the more expensive home and opting for the more expensive payment price. So I'm going to go through those with you in this case study. So this is Pam. She's downsizing from a $650,000 home. She's got some personal assets and some investments. She currently receives the full age pension, and she's getting a home care package level 2. So with Aveo's payment options, the later contract is essentially the, in inverted commas, normal contract. So the deferred management fee contract, where customers pay 35% of their purchase price when they leave. The now contract is, instead of paying 35% later, you can pay 20% now. So that's why the purchase price is going up. And the bond contract is essentially a no exit fee option. So looking at what that means for Pam, you can see on this particular apartment, she's got the 3 payment options ranging from $400,000 to $577,000, let's call it. That does affect how much money she has in her investments. Her home care package is staying the same, and obviously her general service charge stays the same. It's the same apartment. Sorry, I keep saying apartment because this was a real life customer who moved into an apartment. So home, let's say home. It doesn't matter that it was an apartment. When it comes to her age pension, under the later contract, she would get about $11,500. Under the now contract, she'd get about $17,500, and under the bond contract, she would get about $25,500. But of course, that is offset by the fact that more of her investments are going into her home, reducing the amount of income that she can receive from those assets. So the assets are being tied up. Because the amount that she's paying up front is changing, it also changes how much she gets back and how soon after she leaves. So the later contract, you can see that if she lives there for at least 5 years, her repayment would be $260,000 with a guaranteed buyback of 6 months. Under the now contract, she gets the $400,000 back, and again a 6-month buyback timeframe. And under the bond contract, she gets back $560,000. So part of this fee, or part of this price here, is an establishment fee of 3%, which is not refundable. And with that particular option, there's a 3-month buyback. So this is one way in which Pam can supersize her downsize. Instead of going with the later contract, she could choose the now or the bond. And I really want to stress that the purpose of this is not, it's not a goal-seek mission. We're not going, okay, let's just find the option that equates to the most amount of pension. And I can tell you in real life, this particular customer didn't go with the option that equated to the most amount of pension, because some people want to use that money in their investments. They want to use it to generate an income. Some of them want to spend it. Some of them want to do a little bit of both. So there are, individual factors that overlay this that the customer really needs to go and speak to their financial advisor about. The other option Pam's got is to look at a more expensive apartment. So you can see with this apartment, it's still a 2-bed, 1-bath apartment, but it had a different aspect. And you can see that the price on this apartment on the later contract was $400,000. So we've gone from a $400,000 later contract to a $465,000 later contract. And that then takes the bond contract price up to $670,000. Under these 3 options, you can see her home care package is still staying the same, general service charges the same. Her pension ranges from, let's call it $16,500 to $26,500. This $26,689 is the maximum pension. So if you are seeing that, I had an inquiry last week and someone said, oh, the pension's not going up any further, even though we've shown, a different payment option or a different home. You can't get more than the maximum, and $26,689 for a single person at the moment is the maximum age pension. So I guess, this strategy works to the point at which they get the maximum pension. Beyond that point, there is no more pension for them to receive. So you've got to, they have to work out, well, is that worth it, or should they, drop back to a different payment option or a different property? Likewise, you can see that the different contracts affect how much she gets back at the end, right? Exactly the same percentages as what we went through on the other apartment, just different dollar amounts. So for customers and for you guys as the sales team having this conversation with customers, it is all about the vibe. So it is all about, in the first instance, finding that village that they want to be part of. So finding, you know, the village that has the right vibe, and finding their people, finding their tribe, and finding the activities that they want to be involved in, and then supersizing their downsize is a way in which they can make that move more affordable. So crunching the numbers, making sure that they're aware not just how much they pay up front, how much they pay while they live there, how much they pay, and how soon they get their money back when they leave. I think it's really important to stress to them that staying home isn't free. It seems to be that people look at downsizing into a retirement community and they go, oh, well, all of this is going to cost me money, whereas staying at home is free. It is absolutely not free. We did a webinar not that long ago about how to compare staying at home with a retirement community. So by all means, jump into our new resources section if you haven't already done so, and you can watch those recordings anytime you like on demand. And if you want to get through it a little bit quicker, I've been told reliably that you can watch it at 1.5 speed and it still makes sense. And of course, we would encourage everyone to seek advice from a retirement living and aged care specialist. And again, there's a link in the resources section on where you can find a really good financial advisor. You'll also find phone number within the Village Gurus Essentials report, and you can always drop us a line. Now, I have managed to finish with 3 minutes left, so I am keen to get this hand up. If it's still you, Pam, it is. Pam, you're just self-muted, so if you want to turn your microphone on, I should be able to hear your question now, if you can still remember what it was. If anyone else has got any questions, feel free to pop your hand up and I can turn your microphone on from my end, as in unmute you from my end, but you'll have to unmute yourself at your end. Or you can pop them in the chat box. I'm happy with questions either way. No question, Pam? Maybe it's just have you just inadvertently pushed the raise hand button? I might put it down and then you can put it back up if you meant to do it. If you're looking for your mute button, Pam, in the very top of the menu for this webinar, you'll see a microphone, and at the moment your microphone, the circle around your microphone will be red. If you click that, your microphone will turn to green and I'll be able to hear you. It just defaults to mute. Did anyone else have any questions, comments, feedback, other topics you'd like to hear about? Someone suggested last week just like a very simple pension and rent assistance webinar. If that's of interest, let us know. We're looking into that at the moment. Okay, well, if there's no questions, I'll let you all go. I will give you back exactly 1 minute of your day. Thank you so much for attending. And just so you know, we have added an extra webinar to this series. It is another What's New with Village Guru. So keep your eye out for, oh, what a bummer. Do you want to type your question in, Anne? Oh, sorry, Pam. Or if it's something you want to take offline, you can just give me a buzz after this. Yeah, so we have added another webinar to the end of this series, which is about a new enhancement that is coming on the 1st of March. So if you want to hear more about that, jump on to that webinar, which will be next week. So this was meant to be the last webinar in this series, but we have extended it because because we're adding another enhancement. Reminder that if you do send us feedback that results in us, you know, making a change to the software, so whether it's good or bad in your eyes, I don't think there's any such thing as bad feedback. We will send you a $100 gift voucher. You can choose from either Coles Myer or Dan Murphy's. So by all means, send us through those suggestions, because in all honesty, our best ideas are your ideas. So send them through and we will send you out a voucher if we use that. Okay, perfect. Thanks, Pam. Okay, I'll let everyone go. Thanks, everyone. See ya. Bye.